Believe it or not, this actually happened. My father kicked me out of my grandpa's house right after his funeral, thinking he'd snagged all his millions. But 3 days later, he came to me begging for forgiveness, and trust me, I was floored by what was hidden in the will. My name's Emily, and this story flipped everything I thought I knew about family. I'm Emily, 28, a freelance marketer from Charleston, South Carolina. My grandpa, David, was my everything father, mentor, best friend. He built a construction company from nothing, turning it into an empire worth $25 million. My father, his son, was the opposite: cold, greedy, obsessed with money. I lived in a small apartment in Charleston, but spent a lot of time at Grandpa's old mansion with creaky wooden floors and a rose garden. It was my second home, my sanctuary. Life felt perfect until the funeral. Life with Grandpa was like a warm blanket on a chilly day. Every Sunday, we'd plant new roses in his garden, and he'd ask me questions that made me think, "What's real strength, Emily?" I'd laugh, saying something about muscles, and he'd say, "Strength is in your actions, not your words." His house was full of books, paintings, and stories. We'd talk for hours about his first construction project or how he picked out rose varieties. He'd say, "Life's a book, write one you'd be proud of." My father showed up rarely, always with an agenda. His eyes would scan the antiques like he was tallying up dollars. Once, I caught him with a stranger talking about reassigning Grandpa's assets. It stung, but I stayed quiet. Grandpa said, "Give him a chance, Emily. People can change." I believed him. I shouldn't have. When Grandpa's health declined, I quit my job and moved into his mansion. I cared for him, read him books, tended the roses. My father started visiting more, but not for Grandpa, for the will. One day, I overheard him whispering on the phone, "It'll all be mine soon." My heart sank, but I kept quiet. Grandpa noticed and said, "Emily, people show you who they are. Don't look away." I didn't realize how right he was. But that was just the start. Grandpa's funeral was a gray, heavy fog. I stood by his coffin, tears streaming down my face. My father didn't come near, didn't hug me. He was waiting for the will reading. In Grandpa's office, we gathered me, the lawyer William, and a few of the company's old-timers. My father sat at Grandpa's desk, acting like he already owned everything. William started, "David leaves the company and the house to his son." My father smirked, looked at me, and said, "Emily, you've got until tomorrow. Grab your stuff." I choked on the pain. The man who was supposed to protect me was throwing me out. But I didn't know what he'd overlooked. The next morning, 2 guards hired by my father stood at the entrance. The locks were already being changed. I packed 2 suitcases, a music box from my 16th birthday, seashells from Cape Cod. A lump clogged my throat. How could he do this? I got in my car, my heart shattering. Then my phone rang. "Miss Emily, this is Linda from William Henderson's office. Come urgently. It's about the will." My hand shook. What would you do in my shoes? Drop a comment, and let's see how far this story reaches. As wild as it sounds, this is real. I was standing by my car with 2 suitcases, kicked up by my father from Grandpa's house, when a lawyer's call turned everything upside down. What I learned in William's office made me see my family in a whole new light. I pulled up to William Henderson's office in downtown Charleston. The old building, with its wooden panels and leather book smell, felt like a step back in time. Linda, William's assistant, greeted me with a warm smile, but her eyes hinted at something big coming. I sat down, my heart pounding like a drum. William, Grandpa's lawyer, was calm, but his voice had a spark. "Your father heard the will but didn't get it," he said, opening a thick folder. "He's always been in a rush for money, missing the point." I blinked, confused. "But he got everything," I mumbled. "The company, the house, $25 million. William shook his head. "Not quite. He pulled out a separate document signed by Grandpa. At the will reading, your father only heard what he wanted, that he gets the company and house, but David, your grandpa, added a clause, revealed only if conditions are broken. I held my breath. William went on. Your father was to ensure you, Emily, have lifelong housing in the family mansion. He kicked you out the next day, breaking the main condition. Now all the assets are yours. My mind spun. Grandpa, my dear David, had planned this like a chess grandmaster, anticipating every move my father would make. But this was just the beginning. William handed me a letter from Grandpa. Emily, if you're reading this, your father is showing his true colors. You've always been my heart. The company's yours. But be careful, he won't give up. Tears stung my eyes. Grandpa's warning felt like an alarm bell. William added, your father tried to blackmail David before he passed, threatened to expose all business secrets, shady contracts from the 90s if he didn't rewrite the will. My fists clenched, nails biting into my palms. Blackmail? My own father? It explained why Grandpa was on the phone with William so often in his final months, double-checking everything. I left the office, my head buzzing. Charleston's sun was blinding, but I felt the chill. My father wasn't just waiting for an inheritance, he tried to strong-arm Grandpa into giving it all up. I returned to my apartments in downtown Charleston, which I'd rented after being kicked out. The evening was quiet, and I sifted through memories, planting roses with Grandpa and teaching me, life's a book, write one you'd be proud of. But now I wondered, did he know how far my father would go? The next day, Sarah, a friend from the company's accounting department, texted me. She was one of the few who quietly despised my father. Emily, check the office documents. Your father's up to something. My blood ran cold. Sarah was hinting at a switch. My father had tried to funnel assets to a fake firm, Blue Horizon, even before the funeral. That was the second blow. He didn't just kick me out, he wanted to steal everything, unaware of Grandpa's trap. I called William, and he said, we're looking into it, but you need to be at the office. This is your company now. I got to the office, a sleek building overlooking Charleston's harbor. The staff looked at me with sympathy and hope. Miss Emily, said John, the senior manager, we worked with David for 30 years. He wanted you to carry on his legacy. I nodded, but inside I was shaking. Run an empire. I wasn't ready. But there was no turning back. William and I found documents. My father had signed a contract with the Blue Horizon, a shell company created a month before Grandpa's death. It was his backup plan to siphon off money if the will didn't go his way. That evening, my father called. His voice shook. Emily, we need to talk. It's a misunderstanding. I gripped the phone, my fingers whitening. A misunderstanding? He blackmailed Grandpa, kicked me out, tried to steal the company. But his tone gave him away. He knew he'd lost. I agreed to meet, not for him, for Grandpa. What would you do in my shoes? Text him back or demand answers face to face? Share in the comments, because things got even messier from here. Believe it or not, I still remember every detail. My father called, begging for a meeting, after kicking me out of Grandpa's house and trying to steal his company. But what went down at that meeting uncovered a conspiracy that still gives me chills. I agreed to meet my father at a cafe on Charleston's waterfront. The buzz of the streets mixed with the scent of fresh coffee, but I could barely breathe from the tension. He walked in, not as smug as at Grandpa's funeral. His suit was rumpled, his eyes darting. Emily, he started. I got carried away. Let's fix this. I stared at him, anger and pain wrestling inside me. Fix it? After he blackmailed Grandpa, swapped company assets, and threw me out. I clutched my coffee cup, my fingers trembling. Speak, I said coldly. What do you want? His smile was as fake as cheap plastic. I want to help you with the company. We're family. Family? That word cut like a blade. But I nodded, deciding to hear him out. Something told me he was up to no good. My father started talking about a plan how he could bring in investors to expand the company. But his words sounded rehearsed, like a script. I remembered Grandpa's words, "People show you who they are, don't look away." Right then, I knew he hadn't changed. He was playing me. After the meeting, I couldn't just sit there. In my downtown Charleston apartments, which I'd rented after being kicked out, I opened my laptop and dove into the company's financial reports, thanks to access from Sarah. Among the numbers, I spotted odd transfers to Blue Horizon, the same firm my father used to swap assets. The amounts were small but steady, starting months before Grandpa's death. This wasn't just a plan, it was a conspiracy, older than I'd thought. I called William, Grandpa's lawyer, and told him what I found. "Emily, you've got a lead," he said. "It points to Richard, the owner of Blue Horizon." My blood ran cold. They were planning to sell off key assets before I could claim my inheritance. I went back to the company office, where John, the senior manager, and Sarah, my friend from accounting, were waiting. Sarah, with her sharp analytical mind, had been digging through reports since she first sensed trouble. "Emily," she said, her voice steady but her eyes worried, "we've uncovered their scheme." She showed me a chain of encrypted emails my father sent to Richard weeks before Grandpa's funeral. In them, he proposed faking financial reports to create an illusion of company instability. It was a clever setup. They aimed to tank investor confidence, crush the value of assets, then scoop them up cheap through Blue Horizon for resale. Cold fury gripped my chest. This wasn't just greed, it was a calculated plan to destroy everything Grandpa, David, had built, turning his dream into their cash machine. I sat in Grandpa's office, staring at his old photo on the desk. He was smiling, standing by his first construction site. Tears burned my eyes. How could my father betray him like this? I remembered planting roses with Grandpa, how he said, "Life's a book, write one you'd be proud of." I couldn't let my father ruin his legacy. But what could I do? I was a marketer, not a tycoon. John saw my hesitation and said, "Miss Emily, we're with you. David believed in you." His words were a lifeline, but fear lingered. William suggested calling an urgent board meeting. "If we prove your father's conspiracy, we can strip him of any influence in the company and take this to court," he said. We gathered in the boardroom, Charleston's harbor glinting outside. The air was thick with tension, like before a storm. I laid out my father's blackmail, asset swaps, and fake financial troubles. Sarah shared the decrypted emails, and John added details on shady contracts. Rita, an older board member and Grandpa's friend from his social circle, shook her head. "David always knew your father would pick money over family," she said. Her words hit hard but fueled my resolve. The board voted to block all deals with Blue Horizon and send the case to court. But that evening, I found an anonymous note slipped under my apartment door. "Give up the company, or you'll regret it." My heart raced. It wasn't my father's handwriting, but I knew he was behind it. Or was it Richard? I called William, and he said, "Emily, this is their desperation. We're close." Fear gripped me. What would you do in my place? Ignore the threat or hire security? Drop a comment, because things got even dicier from here. An anonymous note under my apartment door made me realize the fight for Grandpa's legacy had hit a new level of danger. But what I uncovered next revealed a betrayal that shook me to my core. After being kicked out of Grandpa's house, I rented apartments in downtown Charleston, modest but stylish, with a view of the city's old streets. Sitting there, holding the note to "Give up the company, or you'll regret it," my heart pounded, but my mind stayed sharp. Grandpa David taught me, life's a book, write one you'd be proud of. I couldn't back down. Instead of panicking, I dug deeper. William, Grandpa's lawyer, gave me access to the company's old archives. I spent the night poring over contracts on my laptop and found one signed by my father with Blue Horizon while Grandpa was still alive. Richard's signature, the firm's owner, looked off too perfect, almost forged. I remembered Sarah, my accounting friend, bragging about her signature analysis skills. I sent her a scan, and an hour later she called. "Emily, this isn't Richard's signature, it's someone else's." My mind froze. A third player in this conspiracy? I met Sarah and John, the senior manager, at the company office. Charleston's harbor sparkled outside, but the room was tense. Sarah's analysis showed the signature matched Lisa, my father's secretary, who'd worked for Grandpa's company for years. Lisa, quiet, unassuming, with a kind smile, wasn't on it. Cold fury tightened my chest. This wasn't just Grandpa's betrayal, it was a stab at all of us. Sarah explained. Lisa had access to internal systems. She helped your father fake transfers to Blue Horizon. I recalled Lisa lingering in Grandpa's office once, sorting papers. I had brushed it off then, but now it clicked. She, my father, and Richard had been building this scheme for years. I called William and told him about Lisa. His tone was grim. "Emily, this is big. We can prove their conspiracy, but we need to move fast." He suggested confronting Lisa at the next board meeting. I agreed, but inside I was boiling. How could Lisa, someone Grandpa treated like family, do this? I thought back to planting roses with him, how he said, "Strength is actions, not words." His words echoed, pushing me forward. I wasn't ready to leave, but for Grandpa I had to be. The board meeting felt like a chess match. We gathered in the boardroom, Charleston's harbor gleaming through the glass. Lisa sat in the corner, nervously fidgeting with a folder. I locked eyes with her and said, "Lisa, we know about the forged signatures." Her face went pale, and she stammered a denial, but Sarah laid out the evidence: emails, signatures, bank transfers. Rita, Grandpa's old friend and board member, added, "David trusted you, Lisa. How could you?" Lisa broke, her voice shaking. "My father made me. He said it was for the company's good." Anger gave way to sorrow. She was a pawn in my father's game, but that didn't excuse her. The board voted unanimously to fire Lisa and send the evidence to court. William said, "This will strip your father of any influence in the company." But as I left the office, my phone buzzed with a new message from an unknown number. "You've gone too far. Stop, or it'll get worse." My breath caught. This wasn't just a note anymore. Threats were getting real. I called William, and he urged, "Emily, get security. We're close," but they're desperate. Sitting in my apartment, staring at Charleston's lights, I tried to process it. My father, the man who should have protected me, was now my enemy. But I couldn't stop. Grandpa believed in me. That night, sleep didn't come. I thought of Grandpa, his rose garden, his lessons. I opened my laptop and started planning how to protect the company, how to honor his legacy. But deep down, I knew the final battle was coming. What would you do in my place? Keep fighting or try to talk it out with my father? Share in the comments, because things got even tenser from here. Believe it or not, this isn't made up. The threats were getting real, but I knew backing down meant betraying everything Grandpa David built. What happened in the final showdown made me rethink what family and leadership really mean. After the message, "You've gone too far, stop, or it'll get worse," I hired security, as William, Grandpa's lawyer, advised. My downtown Charleston apartments, with their view of the old streets, felt like a temporary fortress, but I was under siege. I sat at my laptop, digging through new data Sarah, my accounting friend, pulled from the company archives. She found another clue. My father was funneling money to an offshore account tied to Blue Horizon, with one transfer linked to Lisa, his secretary. This wasn't just a conspiracy, it was a web of deceit, and I had to dismantle it. I thought of Grandpa's words, "Life's a book, write one you'd be proud of." His voice was my anchor in this storm. I decided to play their game, but smarter. With William, we hatched a plan. Lure my father and Richard, Blue Horizon's owner, to a meeting under the guise of dividing assets. I texted my father, "Let's talk about the company. I'm ready to negotiate." My stomach churned at the thought, but I knew this was my shot. We set the meeting in the company's boardroom, overlooking Charleston's harbor. John, the senior manager, and Sarah helped set up hidden cameras. We'd record every word. I felt a mix of fear and resolve, like standing on a cliff's edge, with no way back. When my father and Richard walked in, the air in the boardroom grew heavy, like before a storm. My father looked tense, his smile forced. Richard, a tall man with cold eyes, used confidence. "Emily," my father said, "I'm glad you've come around. We can split the company." I nodded, pretending to agree. "Name your terms," I said, keeping my voice steady despite my racing heart. They started talking about selling assets to Blue Horizon, thinking I was caving. Then I turned on the projector. Their emails, leases, forged signatures, and bank transfers flashed on the screen. "This is your scheme," I said, locking eyes with my father. "Blackmailing Grandpa, swapping assets, faking financial trouble." Richard paled. My father tried to argue, but I cut in, and it's all being recorded. Their faces were like masks ripped off by a gust of wind. They were caught. My father jumped up, his voice shaking with rage. "You don't know what you're doing, Emily." But I was calmer than ever. "I know exactly what I'm doing," I said. "You chose money over family. Grandpa knew it." William walked in with copies of the evidence and the court summons. The board, including Rita, Grandpa's old friend, had already voted to boo my father from the company and take the case to court. Richard tried to bluff, threatening lawyers, but William was firm. "We have ironclad proof. You're done." They left, leaving a silence that rang in my ears like their defeat. I stood by the window, watching the harbor. My heart was heavy, but a new strength grew inside. I thought of planting roses with Grandpa, how he said, "Strength is actions, not words." I'd chosen to fight for his legacy, and now his $25 million empire was mine. But victory didn't feel good. My father, the man who should have been family, was a stranger. Back in my apartments that night, I flipped through Grandpa's old photo album. Pictures of his first construction site, his smile, our garden walks. It reminded me why I fought. Not for money, but for what he built with love. A week later, the court took the case. The evidence was airtight: blackmail, forgery, conspiracy. My father and Richard lost everything, and Lisa agreed to cooperate with prosecutors to lessen her punishment. I started working with John and Sarah to rebuild trust in the company. It was tough. I was still a marketer, not a mogul, but the staff believed in me, like Grandpa did. Rita told me, "David would be proud of you, Emily." Those words meant more than any millions, but they also reminded me of the cost. I'd lost my father but found myself. Now, sitting in Grandpa's office, staring at his photo, I've learned family isn't blood, it's the people who stand by you in the storm. Grandpa's legacy isn't just the company, but his lessons, strength in truth, actions, and love. If you were in my shoes, would you forgive your father or let him go for good? Drop a comment and subscribe to catch more stories. Now check out the next video, it'll hook you just as much. I thought exposing my father and his allies was the end of the fight for Grandpa's legacy, but a new twist showed the truth ran deeper than I could have imagined. It made me realize what true victory means. After the trial, I sat in my downtown Charleston apartments, gazing at the old streets lit by lanterns. The win over my father, Richard, and Lisa was bittersweet, but it gave me control of Grandpa's $25 million empire. I was working with John, the senior manager, and Sarah, my accounting friend, to restore investor confidence. But something nagged at me, a feeling the story wasn't over. Grandpa David always said, "Life's a book, write one you be proud of." His words pushed me to dig deeper. One evening, Sarah called, her voice tense. "Emily, I found an old contract in the archives. It's not tied to Blue Horizon, but you need to see this." I rushed to the company office, where Charleston's harbor glimmered outside. Sarah showed me a document signed by Grandpa a year before his death. It was an agreement with a secret charitable foundation he'd set up, funneling company profits to local schools and hospitals. But my father, as a board member, had blocked the transfers, redirecting the money to his own accounts. This was a new twist of theft I hadn't known about. Cold fury gripped my chest. My father didn't just blackmail Grandpa and forge documents, he was dismantling his dream of helping others. I called William, Grandpa's lawyer. "Emily, this changes everything," he said. "It proves your father systematically undermined David's mission. We decided to revive the foundation and file a new lawsuit against him. But I needed to know why Grandpa kept this from me." Back in my apartments, I opened his old photo album. Tucked between the pages was a note: "Emily, if you found the foundation, you're ready to carry my mission. Money's a tool, not the goal." Tears stung my eyes. Grandpa wasn't just protecting me, he was preparing me for something bigger. I called a board meeting in the boardroom. The tension was palpable, but I felt more confident than ever. Rita, Grandpa's old friend, nodded as I shared the foundation's details. "David always said you were his true heir," she said. "We voted to restart the foundation and announce its work publicly. It was my first real step as a leader, and it felt right." But that same day, I got a letter from my father, not a threat, but a plea to meet. "Emily, I want to explain," he wrote. My stomach tightened. After all the blackmail, asset swaps, and theft, he wanted to talk. I agreed to meet at the Waterfront Cafe in Charleston. The hum of the streets mixed with the coffee's aroma, but I stayed on guard. My father looked broken, his eyes dull. "I messed up," he said quietly. "I lost everything to greed." His words seemed genuine, but I remembered Grandpa's lesson: strength is actions, not words. I looked at him and said, "You can come back to the family, but only if you prove it with deeds." He nodded, but I knew it'd be a long road. Now I lead Grandpa's company and foundation, learning to be the leader he saw in me. Every day, I look at his photo in the office and feel his support. I've learned victory isn't revenge, it's building something bigger than yourself. If you were in my shoes, would you give your father another chance or shut the door for good? Drop a comment and subscribe for more stories. Now check out the next video, it'll grab you just as much. That's the end of today's story. Thanks so much for sticking around. Share your thoughts in the comments, I love reading what you think. And if you'd like more, there's a full playlist waiting in the description section of this video. New real stories are coming soon, and I'd love to share them with you. And I hopefully see you next time. If you're not subscribed yet, hit subscribe and tap the bell so you'll always catch the latest stories.